Good evening everyone out there in YouTube land. D here, back with another video. In this video I will be continuing to read the storybook Unbirthday, the sequel, I don't know if it's official or not, to Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. We left off in chapter 1 where Alice meets a nice handsome young man. Before I continue, there's something I forgot to mention in the last video. If any of you has already read this book, please no spoilers in the comments section. Also, if you read this book already, then what the heck are you doing here? Anyway, let's continue with chapter 2. She found herself quickly walking away from Wellington Square, more quickly than before, and far more quickly than was strictly necessary. She forced herself to slow to a more ladylike stroll and concentrated on adjusting her breathing, not that hard with a course of restricting her deepest breaths. Her cheeks felt warm and were probably a beautiful rosy shade. It wasn't entirely a lie. She really was heading straight toward Vivian's now to develop her pictures. She remembered herself enough to cross to the other side of the street so she could peep into the window of Willard's finest haberdashery. His sign had gold letters and silver flourishes, and the hats in his window were stacked artfully on top of each other like a carnival act, complete with fancy plumes and ribbons and spangles. It was delightful, and also felt somehow familiar. In fact, Alice had made friends with Mr. Willard because he reminded her a bit of someone she once knew in a dream, someone she couldn't quite remember. When he shared a cup of tea with Alice, the cups matched. They sat quietly, and he discussed the advantages of an economic system in which common people controlled the means of production, or at least regulated it, and medical care and legal help were free to all. Also, advanced schooling and university would be provided gratis. While this was a trifle boring, it was also quite mad, and his hair was white and wild. He and her aunt had hit it off splendidly. Not romantically, but they were bosom companions at once, and he became a fixture at her salons. Today he wasn't at his work table, but standing outside his shop, eyes closed and face turned up to the sun like a flower, enjoying its rays. "How do you do, Mr. Willard?" she asked, curtsying. He opened his eyes and smiled at her, his cheeks crinkling into 1,000 happy lines. "Oh, my dear, I'm just enjoying this day. The sun is still free for everyone. Never forget that. We can all enjoy this life-giving warmth as much as we want." "Absolutely true, Mr. Willard, as it is the clear blue sky." "Quite right, my girl. Say, did you develop that portrait you took of me? Not that I'm vain or anything." "All right, but perhaps I am. A silly old man indeed. But I would dearly like to see it and show it to my friend Mrs. Alexandros. She is fascinated by photography, but not perhaps as brave as you to take it up as a hobby." "Why, I'm just on my way to Aunt Vivian's right now, Mr. Willard. I shall have it developed directly." "Oh, excellent. And say hello to your aunt, would you? Tell her I have a hat I think she'll absolutely love. Also a pamphlet concerning scientific principles that may prove once and for all that alloparenting, the act of a non-parent helping to raise a child, a niece or nephew say, is not just normal, but in fact integral to our evolution as a higher species. Not everyone need to have a litter of kittens to be part of the great human cycle, I mean." "Alloparenting kittens. Yes, I shall, Mr. Willard. Good day," Alice said, curtsying again. "Good day, Alice." She strolled happily down the road, filled to a surfeit with the bonhomie of the moment, the sun, and a day full of the possibility of everything. Of course, there was also that young man she had just met. He certainly added a certain sense of wonder and potential to the air. She forgot herself, pondering this, and cut through the market, sometimes a place for wonderfully interesting photographs and sometimes a bore, full of gossips who had very strong feelings about Alice and her prospects. She started to duck and hunch over before she caught herself. "Alice," she told herself in a patient but chastising tone, "you're 18 years old now, fully grown and adult, and you can no longer be ordered around or bullied by other adults. Please behave as such." She took a deep breath, thanked herself for the reminder, and straightened up, proceeding past the stalls of cabbages with her head held high in the air. Alice! She slumped. Hello, Mrs. Poggies Dunhow, she said as plainly as she could. Good morning, Mrs. Poggies Dunhow. The short and red-faced woman, Piggies Dunhow, as Alice used to call her to Dinah, pushed away over to talk. She looked exactly the same as when Alice had been of the age to run away from her first sight. Flat hair, grayed pulled back under an old-fashioned bonnet, dark, old-fashioned dress with nary a crinoline or fancy stocking. Despite being the mistress of a rather respectable house from up the street from Alice's family, she dressed and spent like a skinflint from a previous century, and screamed like a tavern matron from a previous millennium. Despite this, or possibly because of it, Alice's parents had occasionally implored her to look after Alice and her sister when they were younger. Her food was terrible and her breath was worse. Somehow, she was always with babies, either children or grandchildren or other young, innocent, and heretofore harmless members of her extended family. Alice, how is your mother? She had a baby under her left arm right then, rather like a ball, tucked and restrained despite its desperate squirms in the name of freedom. She's fine, Mrs. Poggies Dunhow. Thank you. Did she get over that bit of gout she was experiencing? Yes, Mrs. Poggies Dunhow. She's quite well, thank you. Comes from too much meat, you know, the old woman offered confidently, which meant lowering her voice to a mere half-scream volume. It's always wise to temple a roast with a few days of porridge or hash afterward. A good turnip hash will clear straight up. Alice tried very hard not to shudder. That seems reasonable, Mrs. Poggies Dunhow. Excellent advice. But if you'll excuse me, I'm going to see my aunt now and to develop the portraits I took last week, including one of you. The other woman shook her head. Oh, your aunt. Well, there's a black sheep in every flock, and there's a place for black wool in every shawl, I suppose. Give your mother my regards, and your father my sympathy. Yes, Mrs. Poggies Dunhow, I shall. Relieved almost to the point of fainting at such an easy escape, Alice tried not to rush away. While the relationship had improved somewhat since Alice had the dowager sit, with several babies for a portrait, she was still mostly an unpleasant, cabbagey woman whose habits had involved making young Alice and Mathilda read long, archaic passages about the importance of, well, things Alice couldn't even remember. She shuddered at the memory of endless hours of endless sentences in books that made no sense. And which probably cost the good woman no sense, Alice added thoughtfully, knowing well her tightness. Down the hill now, she entered the more bohemian section of town, a poor area with pockets of strangely upbeat residents. Some were truly penniless philosophers who rather read than eat. Some artists who spent every last coin on supplies and refused all patronage. Some were semi-aristocratic descent, enjoying the decadent atmosphere around their artistic friends, and sometimes even contributing. Aunt Vivian was one of the latter. She had a whole building to herself instead of just a flat, perhaps in slightly better shape than those around it. Alice rang the bell and let herself in. The door was never locked. She began immediately to cough. Besides all the usual apparatus of an artistic lifestyle, half-silvered mirrors, enough silk frames draped over to curtain a small theater, great tub of paintings hung on every square inch of the wall, etc., her aunt was a big believer in incense. There was braziers everywhere, and blue smoke hung heavily in every room like a scratchy wall canopy. Alice gulped several mouthfuls of air through her fingers, trying to get used to it before her aunt appeared. Alice! Her aunt strode in from the hallway with the usual drama and even clapped her hands. She wore soft trousers that came down to her calves, exposing a pair of shiny, chic boots. A thick tunic of velvet made for a shirt, and this was protected with a small apron. She also wore a small pair of gold-rimmed glasses and had her light brown hair back in a bun, which meant she was sculpting. The two women embraced, and her aunt gave her a very continental kiss on each cheek. You have a bit of backlog in the dark room, the older woman said, a little accusingly as Alice carefully took off her hat and removed the satchel. We shall have to work together overnight to get everything developed. It's a good thing I ordered all those compounds from the chemist. I knew we would be doing heaps. Alice was really listening. She was looking at the various portraits around the room she had seen 1,000 times. Farmers, actors, politicians, laborers, midwives, a princess, boys, girls, babies, all in rich and luscious tones. Photography captured someone exactly as he or she really was, but left out the color in the cheeks. If she were to take a portrait of Cats, it wouldn't capture him completely unless she used some pink pastel on his face afterward. And some gold for his eyes. "Hello, Alice, where are you?" Vivian demanded, narrowing her own pale gray eyes. She shook a finger at her niece. "You are not here. You are entirely elsewhere. What are you thinking about?" "Oh, the difference between the art of photography and painting." Her aunt regarded her silently. I just met someone, that's all," Alice finally admitted, waiting for her face to flush. But it didn't. "A boy? A young man? A barrister? He was with the children at the square. He helps out the families there sometimes. His parents were immigrants too." "Oh, a Jewish boy? Your parents are going to love that," Vivian said with a wicked grin. She grabbed Alice's hand and pulled her farther into the house, into the basement where the dark room was. "No, it's not like that. No talk, no lies, just work. Work and art." Vivian took a burning joss-stick from her brass holder as she went by and waved it before her as if clearing the air. After putting on bigger pennies, the two women were nearly silent for the next hour. The dark room was tiny and smelled of fresh chemicals and magic. Well practiced in what needed to be done, each worked as if she knew the other's movements beforehand. Pour the solution into that pan. Dip the dry plate in it. Dip the plate in the stop bath. Carefully souse to dry. Repeat. Most of the ones they were working on were Alice's, although a few of the photographs were her aunt's. One a particularly detailed, large format recreation of the death of Socrates. She couldn't wait to take a look at them under real light. In the dim glow of the lantern with the red filter, she could barely see anything, even when she tilted them back and forth and squinted. Eventually they finished, tidied up the spilled chemicals, and left the place to dry on half a dozen pressed and clean tea towels. "I'm going to have a bit of vermouth and see if I can't get Monique to make us light lunch," Vivian said with a heavy sigh, as if they had spent the last hour lifting weights. She crankily stifled a piece of hair back into her bun and disappeared into the smoky rooms beyond. They were supposed to wait an hour or so before handing the plates, but, always impulsive, Alice couldn't help herself. She snuck one into her palm, knowing that if she was caught, her aunt would lecture her about how patience and time were the lost twin sisters of the other muses, the extra ones no one ever talks about, as compared to the more showy ones like Terpsichore and Urania. Alice quickly made her way to the little solarium of the study where the brightest light in the house would be. The portrait she had grabbed was of Mrs. Poggy's Dunhow. She caught a glimpse of the photo in the settee from the staging area where she had taken it. Alice could remember if the sitter had been scowling or grinning with the two weirdly wide rows of tiny white teeth. Maybe it would be a masterpiece of artistic realism. Or maybe just a horrible mockery that she would never be able to show the poor woman. The babies had been squirming. The exposure time had been approximately half a second, too slow to freeze the little tots. They would be blurry around the edges. But then weren't babies a little blurry around the edges all the time anyway, with their drooling blankets and fuzzy hair? Alice looked into the bright sun of the solarium and anxiously tilted her hand around, trying to get a good look without glare. Her eyes widened when she saw what she really held. It wasn't a portrait of Mrs. Poggy's Dunhow at all. It was the Queen of Hearts. Yeah, the Queen of Hearts. Miss Awful with her head. And that's the end of chapter 2 and the end of this video. Be sure to like and subscribe, and I'll be back with chapter 3 sometime in the near future. In the meantime, stay big, everyone.